Hello students, today we are going to take a new chapter, that is the United Nations. The syllabus has been considerably reduced in this chapter. The syllabus for this chapter, United Nations, is the objectives of the United Nations, the composition, only the composition and not the functions, only the composition of the General Assembly, Security Council and the International Court of Law. Got it? Let me repeat again. The syllabus for this chapter has been considerably reduced by the ICSE Council. The present syllabus is the objectives of the United Nations, the composition of General Assembly, Security Council and the International Court of Justice. So we'll be touching upon only these points. But let me give you a brief description about the reason why the United Nations was established. In a short span of 10-20 years, there were two disastrous wars, the First World War and the Second World War. When the First World War was over, many of the powerful nations decided to form an organization, an international organization, which would prevent the further wars, future wars such as the First World War. And they came up with the idea of the League of Nations. But the League of Nations has its own weaknesses. The League of Nations did not have a strong army of its own, and the powerful members such as the United Nations and Russia were not its members. Many of the members of the United Nations were having their own secret agenda. They were very selfish. When the need arose for them to act, they refrained from their duties. For instance, the China and Japanese war, the war between China and Japan, when China approached the League of Nations did nothing. So this exposed the weakness of the League of Nations and the Second World War happened. After the Second World War came to an end, there were two power blocks. Now these were not only powerful nations but power blocks. One was the United States of America and the other was USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republic of Russia, which is now only known as Russia. So these were the two powerful blocks and each had their own ideologies. One believed in the principles of democracy and the other believed in the principles of socialism. Each believed that their principles were the best principle and the entire world should be governed by them. Each were suspicious to one another. Hence, there was a race between who could make more and more destructive weapons. So, a thought came into mind that they should have an international organ which is powerful enough, having its own army, comprising of all the powerful nations to be its members. And on 24th of October 1945, the United Nations organization was formed. So this is a brief history. I am just briefing you all up since it is not in the syllabus. We have to only cover the objectives of the United Nations and the composition of the organs of the United Nations. So let's straight away come to the objectives of the United Nations. The objectives for which the United Nations was established are enshrined in the preamble of the UN Charter. The main objectives of the United Nations are: the purpose of the United Nations was defined in Article 1 of the Charter as 1. To maintain international peace and security, to take collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to peace to suppress acts of aggression or other breaches of peace. So it's very similar to that of the League of Nations, but here it's very clearly mentioned that to take collective measures. So all those nations who are members of the United Nations would join forces together and act against the aggressor nation. So this will make the United Nations a very, very powerful organization, more powerful than any other nations in the world. Even the United States of America would not be as powerful as the United Nations organization. To develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for principle of equal right and self-determination of people. The second point also very clearly states to develop friendly relations among nations. They're trying to promote peace as far as possible among nations by various organs by various agencies of the United Nations, like the human rights principle of equal rights for all human, and self determination of the people. The people's determination of what type of a government they want is very, very crucial. For example, when independence was being granted to India, the British, though they were not very happy to part away with India, but while giving India independence, they took the consensus, or they took a sort of a what we may call it, a referendum from the people, especially of the bordering states where India and Pakistan were to be divided, on whose side they would like to go. For example, the Northeast Frontier. The Northeast Frontier, the people wanted to join Pakistan, and hence parts of Punjab and the Northeast Frontier went to Pakistan, and East Pakistan, we had in East Pakistan, that is what we know today as Bangladesh, even they wanted to join forces with Pakistan. So we had Pakistan on two sides, we had West Pakistan and we had East Pakistan, and in between we had India. So a general consensus was taken, a referendum was taken from the people as to which country they would like to join. Even today, what Pakistan demands of Kashmir, Pakistanis have brainwashed the Kashmiri people and they want a referendum to be taken. And if today, if we might take a referendum, we might lose Kashmir to Pakistan, because that's what the Pakistanis have done. They have brainwashed the people on the basis of their religion, and they want Kashmir to be a part of Pakistan. Otherwise, it's very easy for us to regain the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Why do we not act upon that? Because the people are willing to be independent, the people are willing to be part of Pakistan. That is all the UN, the objective of the UN is to develop friendly relations among nations based on the respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of the people. The third point here is to achieve international cooperation in solving international economic, social, cultural or humanitarian problems, and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedom. So international cooperation is a must, a precondition to have international peace. So how can international cooperation be a booster for international peace? If we cooperate economically. Sometimes we say right now we are facing problem with China. So why don't we stop trade with China? Why can't we stop trade with China? Because it's not possible, it's not actually possible for the government to stop trade with China. If at all we want to stop trade with China, it is we the people who would have to decide, because we have signed a document where free trade free international trade on the basis of equality has been granted to China to have trade relations with India. So we can ban certain apps if we feel that these particular apps are a threat to the general security of the country. We can ban that, but we cannot totally ban the trade with China. So here it's a way of having a peaceful coexistence between the neighboring countries. Then we have social and cultural and humanitarian problems to encourage and respect for human rights and for the fundamental freedom. So we generally have youth exchanges, we have cultural exchange. uh, a troupe of Indian artists might go to any neighboring country and perform the art and tradition of our country. A troupe from that particular country will come to India. In this way, there is an exchange of culture, an exchange of trade, an exchange of thoughts and processes which takes place to maintain peace in the world. The fourth point is to be a center of harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these ends. Disarm, decolonize, and develop are the three new objectives set up by the United Nations. So, if the United Nations has to be in the center of peace and harmony, the following points, the following three D's are very important. What are the following three important D's for the peace of the world? Is disarm, decolonize, and develop. Disarm means to reduce the strength of your destructive weapons. That is to disarm, not to make more and more modified and mass destructive weapons. Second is to decolonize, like the Britishers have done. The Britishers and the French, the Germans have done. The colonies which they had set up all over the world, they have decolonized them. They have given them independence. That is called as decolonization. And develop. So what we see since 1947 to 2020, we see a drastic change in the economic condition of we Indians, of the Indian people. If we ask our parents might generally taunt you all that we did not have the luxury that is given to you. You must study what you have to do. You don't have any work to do. हमारे बचपन में ऐसा हुआ करता था, हम पैदल जाया करते थे, हमारे पास ये सब नहीं था. So you must have heard these statements from your parent, and what your parents are saying is absolutely true. Whatever they say is not false. They are not speaking in the blue. We really had seen the real hardships that we have been through, and what y'all are enjoying now is the past efforts of the government since 1947. Since 1947 till today's date, the government has done a lot to bring up India in as what we see today and what it was a few decades ago. So that was the objectives of the United Nations. We will not take the principles of the United Nations as it is not in the syllabus. Only the objectives we have to mention about that, and then the composition. So from here we will skip straight to the next part of the chapter, that is the composition. Okay, in my textbook, composition is on page number 139. See, the textbooks are different for different schools. Okay, there might be more than 10 to 15 publishers writing the same history but in a different way. The content matter would be the same, and the pages may differ from my textbook to your textbook. So you need not follow the reading word by word as I read from my textbook. It may be very different from what is being written in your textbook, but the gist of the chapter, the essence of the chapter remains the same. You have to understand and write the answers in your own words or with the help of your own textbook. So now coming to composition. All members of the United Nations are members of the General Assembly. Okay, like we have the Lok Sabha, or like you have the assembly in school. When your school assembly assembles, so the students of all the classroom, for example, if there's a assembly meant for the high school section or the middle school section or the primary section, so accordingly the students of all the classroom assemble together. This is called the General Assembly of your school. In the same way, all the members of the United Nations are members of the General Assembly. Am I clear to you all? I hope so. Each state has 5 representatives in the General Assembly. but each state has only one vote. So each state, what do you mean by state here? When we say of state, it means a country. So every country will send 5 representatives from their country to the General Assembly. But that particular country will have only one vote. Though they have 5 members in the General Assembly, these members will have to vote as a unit. So each country would be given only one vote whenever there is a voting regarding any issues. The regular session of the General Assembly begins each year on the third Tuesday in September. So we are already in the month of August. Okay, the third Tuesday in September, that means towards the end of September, there is a General Assembly. The meeting of a General Assembly generally begins on that day. The regular session of the General Assembly begins each year on the third Tuesday in September and continues usually until the third week of December. At the start of each regular session, the Assembly elects a new president, 21 vice presidents, and the chairman of the Assembly's 6 main committees. So this is the composition. That's how the General Assembly is composed of. They are composed of the member nations. Each member nations sends 5 representatives, but these 5 representatives have just a single vote. When they meet, when do the Assembly meet? When does a new session of the Assembly begin? Every year in the month of September, that is the third Tuesday of September, and the Assembly continues till the end of December, third week of December. What do they do at this time? At this time, there is a regular session and they elect a president and 21 vice presidents and the chairman of the assemblies. The 6 main organs of the 6 main committees of the assemblies. So that is the function, that's what they do. To ensure equitable geographical representation, the presidency of the assembly rotates each year among 5 groups of states. So there should be no partiality, like a particular continent should not be holding the post of president for a very long time. That's why it is on the basis of rotation. Each group, they have made the continents into geographical groups, and each group will have the president for a specified period of time. To ensure equitable geographical representation, the presidency of the assembly rotates each year among 5 groups of state: Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America and Caribbean. Latin America and Caribbean is one, and Western Europe and other states, especially, and other states. Okay. Special sessions are convened by the Secretary General at the request of the Security Council or by a special request by a majority of the members. So what are the 5 groups into which the continents are divided? The 5 groups are Africa, one group; Asia, second group; Eastern Europe, third group; Latin America and Caribbean, the 4th group; and Western Europe and the other states as the 5th group. So in this way the 5 groups are there, and the presidency is rotated among these 5 groups. Special sessions are conveyed by the Secretary General at the request of the Security Council or by a special request by a majority of members. In case there is any emergency, in case of emergency, the Security Council will approach the Secretary General and request the Secretary General to conduct or to hold a special assembly. Decisions on important matters are made by a 2/3 majority. These matters include the election of the non-permanent members of the Security Council. Now this is not very important, because again this is actually describing the functions. So only the composition, the part which we have read earlier, that is important. I'll just go through it since it's the continuity of the lesson. To continue as a lesson, we'll complete this paragraph. Security Council admissions of new members, the suspension of or expulsion of members, budgetary issues, etc. Decisions on other questions are made by a majority of members present and voting. So that is the composition of the security, sorry, of the General Assembly. What we are reading was just the General Assembly. So what is the General Assembly? As I have told you earlier, it's the members of the United Nations. All the members of the United Nations are the members of the General Assembly. Each member state can send 5 representatives, but they have only one right to vote. To divide the post of the president equally, the countries of the world have been set up in the 5 groups, and the post of president is rotated among these groups. The sessions of the General Assembly are held in the month of September, that is the 3rd Tuesday of September, and it continues to the 3rd Tuesday of December. Okay, so this is what you need to know from the section of General Assembly. Now coming to the Security Council. We will not study powers and functions since the syllabus has been reduced for us. The Security Council. The Security Council is the executive body of the United Nations. It has the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. It functions continuously. A representative of each of its members must be present at all times at the United Nations headquarters. So the Security Council is actually the strength of the United Nations. Okay, though it is not given the powers of the General Assembly, but it has powers to suggest to the General Assembly, and the General Assembly generally has to listen to the suggestions and ideas put forth by the Security Council. So the Security Council is like an executive body of the United Nations. It has the responsibility of maintaining international peace. And how can it maintain international peace? It has a check over the nations of the world, and if it feels that a particular country is an aggressor country, is the reason because the war is being fought, it can first recommend to the General Assembly to warn that particular nation. Then if the nation does not listen to the United Nations, they have the right to sanction some economic sanctions, put forth some economic sanctions, like the countries of the world would not trade with that particular country, and even after that, that particular nation is adamant, if that particular nation is aggressive, then the Security Council will wage a war against that particular country. So what is presently happening right now in the scenario, what we can see, though the United Nations is not directly involved with China, because China is now acting very aggressive with all its neighboring countries. It is trying to grab land from each and every country that it is bordering with Bhutan, with Tibet, with India. Of course, Pakistan and Nepal are on its side right now. So the United Nations and the United States of America and India, we are trying to in one way detach from China economically. It's one way what we can say, that we ourselves, the countries such as England, the countries such as USA, the countries such as France, the countries such as India, are trying to detach itself from the economic cooperation with China. Right now, China has a hold over the United Nations because it is one of the biggest sponsors. Earlier it was United States of America, but now China has a hold over United Nations, and that is why the United Nations is not acting very, very powerfully against China. So now what's happening actually? The nations themselves are economically distancing themselves from China. So this is what happens when the United Nations, the Security Council, feels that a particular nation is an aggressor nation. So first it imposes economical sanctions, and if that is not enough, then they are warned and a war is waged against that particular nation. So composition of the Security Council. The council consists of 15 members. It has 5 permanent members: China, France, Russia, Britain, and the United States of America. So these are very powerful nations. They are the permanent members of the United Nations organization, and they are the permanent members of the Security Council as well. Okay, I'll repeat the name again. China, France, Russia, Britain, and the United States of America are the permanent members of the Security Council. The regional representatives of the 10 non-permanent members is Afro-Asian countries, Latin American countries, West European and other countries. East European countries, the 10 non-permanent members are elected by the General Assembly by 2/3 majority for a term of 2 years. A retiring member is not eligible for immediate re-election. The presidency of the council rotates monthly according to the English alphabetical listing of its member states. So, if they ask us the question about the composition of the Security Council, so the Security Council has 5 permanent members, and they are China, France, Russia, Britain, and the United States of America. These are the 5 permanent members, and the remaining 10 non-permanent members are from Afro-Asian countries, Latin American countries too. Afro-Asian countries have 5 members from Africa and Asia combined together. From Latin American countries there are 2 members. From West Europe and other countries there are 2 members, and East European countries there are 1 members. In this way, they are altogether 10 plus 5, 15 members in the Security Council. Okay, and the membership is held, the temporary membership is held for a term of 2 years. Okay, and after a member nation retires, that particular member nation is not eligible for immediate elections. Okay, now these members, the Security Council, the permanent members of the Security Council, they have the veto power. Now what is the veto power? The veto power is the right to say no. Again, this is not in the syllabus, so I'm just briefing you all orally on superficially, just touching the topic. So veto powers is the right to refuse any of the 5 permanent members if they disagree. So that particular matter is not taken into consideration. If example, it is decided that the Security Council should take action against Pakistan, but if China disagrees with this, the United Nations or the Security Council cannot act against Pakistan because China has refused to act against Pakistan. So that is why the Pakistanis are very close to China. Okay, Pakistanis, we are being told that the Pakistani is a terrorist nation. So why can't the Security Council take action on that? Because China stands in for Pakistan. That is why. Okay, now we are to the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. Its seat is at The Hague, Netherlands. It began work in 1946 when it replaced the Permanent Court of International Justice, which had functioned in the Peace Palace since 1922. The court has a dual role: to settle in accordance with international law the legal disputes submitted to it by the states, and to give advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by duly authorized international organs and agencies. Again, I am just reading it because this is not in the syllabus. What is in the syllabus is the composition of the International Court of Justice. The court is composed of 15 judges elected to 9 years term of office by the United Nations General Assembly and Security Council, sitting independently of each other. So this is very important, the composition of the court. So there are 15 judges. These judges are elected for a term of 9 years. Who elects them? It is the United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council. They will sit independently. They will discuss independently and vote independently in favor of these judges whom they want to elect for the International Court of Justice. It may not include more than one judge from any one nation. So every nation, the 15 judges would come from 15 different countries. Elections are held every 3 years for one third of the seats, and retiring judges may be re-elected. It is very much like the Rajya Sabha. Okay, like in the Rajya Sabha, after every 6 years, okay, one third members of its members retire and new members are elected. In the same way, every 3 years, one third of the members retire and new elections are held for new judges. Remember, the term of the judges is for